the biggest financial mistake that parents do is thinking that we'll figure this out later. We have time for this. Let's plan it later. Your children are not just going to inherit your wealth. They're not just going to inherit your habits, but they're also going to inherit your money habits. You can get your 5-year-old to pay in a shop. You can get your 13-year-old to sit with you and look at your mutual funds portfolio. If you're sending your kid in India to a good private college, you need to budget anywhere between 35 lakhs to 1 crore, depending on the course, etc. Trying to send them abroad, in today's cost, it's anywhere between 1.5 to 3 crore. We have a great affinity towards gold, and I know I've heard my mother say that I will save the gold for her, it will be good for her future. Last 20 years, the return on gold has only been about 8 to 9%, right? Actually, closer to 8%, which means you're not beating inflation.
Is the most expensive education the best education? Today we have Krithika, who will talk with us about how parents can be financially prepared for their child's future. Welcome, Krithika.
Hi, Swati.
So, what is the biggest financial mistakes that parents make when they talk about their child's future, and what should they be doing instead?
So, first of all, if you are a parent who's watching this podcast, you already done something very powerful because you're thinking ahead. So, the biggest financial mistake that parents do is thinking that we'll figure this out later. We have time for this. Let's plan it later. And this doesn't happen out of carelessness. It just happens that parenting is very overwhelming and takes a lot of time. So it's easier to put this decision off. We can do the same for our kids. What many parents don't realize is that the cost, the complexity, and the challenges involved in parenting today are very different from our parents. So let me give you an example. Right. So I went to IIM Calcutta 32nd batch in 1997. And for a 2-year degree course, I paid about 1,25,000. And it was a tidy sum at that point in time. Right. So you went to IIM about 5 years back. How
Yeah.
much did you pay?
About 20 lakh for 2-year course.
Right. So significantly higher. So what happens is in the back of my mind, I have that 1 lakh number and I know the costs have increased, but I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be 8 lakhs or 10 lakh rupees. And then suddenly I discovered to do a MBA today, it's going to cost anywhere between 30 to 40 lakhs. And you realize it when your child is going into admission, and that point in time, you're scrambling around for money. Your child has got this amazing admission, and you're worried about how you're going to financially support him or her. Right? Not a great place to be in. And it's not necessary you have to be in that place, right? So let me give you a more positive example, right? So there is this lovely family, the Singhs, three of them, mother, father, and they have a son, right? And they first came into Scripbox in 2015. At that point in time, they really didn't have much saved up, but they knew, like many Indian families, they had two goals. One is to give their child an international, globally recognized education, and the second is to prepare well for their own retirement. Mr. Singh actually just started to do the 10,000 rupees SIP at that point in time, and his wife joined a little later, and slowly they started increasing their SIPs. Today, they are sitting on a corpus of about 1.5, 1.6 crores, of which 80 lakh rupees has already been set aside for their son. And their son still has a few years to college. So, what happens is when their son comes to college, they're not thinking about how am I going to afford this, but they're more focusing on their child and helping him make the right choices.
When usually parents think about their kids, right? It's either college fee, which counts as a big expense, or their marriage. But there are many stages in the between which, like parents think these are minor, but they hit the pocket in a very big manner. So, what do you think? Are those stages, and what might their cost be today?
So let me break it out into phases. The first phase is what I call the early years, when the kid is just been born till about 4 or 5 years. And at this point in time, the expenses start increasing. But still, while you realize that expenses, that parenting is going to be an expensive exercise, still at this point in time, it's mostly affordable. It's like 4 to 5 lakh rupees a year. Then comes the next big jump, which is right around 6 or 7 years, where kids, this is the school starting year. So, which board do you want to send your kid to? CBSE, ICSE, IB, like there's so many boards. Do you want to send your kid to a place where the student teacher ratio is 40 kids, or do you want to send them to something which is more exclusive, which has only 20 kids in the class? All of these influence your choices. So, if I were to take a city like Bangalore, for example, you could send your kid to a CBSE or an ICC school, which costs, let's say, about 1.5 lakh rupees a year. A slightly different CBSE or an ICSE school where the student teacher ratio will be much lower, say maybe only 25 instead of 50. And there you might pay, say, 3.5 lakh. You could decide to send your kid to a Cambridge where you might easily be paying 7 to 8 lakh rupees a year. And then come the really high end, which is the international schools, which interestingly many families are opting for, where you go into an IB curriculum and the fees, and it's astounded me when I heard this, can be anywhere between 10 to 13 lakh rupees a year. So you have a wide range of options. And as a parent, it is difficult to make the right choice and set. Then comes the next pressure point, which is the next bigger pressure point, which I call the pre college years, right? So by this time, your kid has become a teen, is typically not listening to you very much, more influenced by the peer group. And kids might decide, okay, I want to go abroad, I want to do, something else different. And suddenly you realize that your school fees, right, have gone up tremendously because school fees are increasing by 10 to 12% every year. And suddenly you're talking about 10 to 15 lakh rupees a year. The big one is the launch, life launch, which is your college. And you have a wide range of college options. Different from our time where you just had engineering, medicine, BSc math, you had some 5, 6 options. You also have a lot of options in terms of whether you study in India or you study abroad. And in abroad, you have so many different countries. Australia costs very different from, say, a US. So if you are sending your kid in India to a good private college, you need to budget anywhere between 35 lakhs to 1 crore, depending on the course, etc. And if you're planning to send them abroad, in today's cost, it's anywhere between 1.5 to 3 crore. Parenting doesn't end there. Many people also plan for, weddings, startup fund, etc. So it's a lifelong exercise. So I think the important thing is there is nothing like a inexpensive college, first of all. And the second thing is, while all of these numbers tend to look scary and you're thinking, oh my God, I have to go through all of this, I think with the right planning and the right preparation, parents can sail through this. It's really about starting early and having the right planning and preparation.
Even after knowing in advance that there are still many financial hidden costs that parents usually don't account for, and when it comes up, it's like a shocker for them. So, what do you think are those financial hidden costs?
I think there are two kinds of surprises that parents get. So one is the one that creeps, which is inflation. So we all know what inflation is. Inflation is that prices are increasing year on year. What is the rate at which it's increasing? Now, if you look at food, if you look at general essentials, typically you would have read that inflation is about 6-7%. What does a 6-7% inflation mean? It means that the cost of that item will double in about 12 years. Rough way of understanding it. So education inflation is about somewhere around 11% to 12% today. So, what does a 12% inflation mean? That means the cost of your education is doubling every 6 years. So, in the 15-year period, by the time your kid is going to college, or a 12-year period, your costs have already become three and a
Three
half,
and a half.
4x of what they are today. I think the second hidden cost actually is a surprise shock cost of liquidity, which comes when your kid is going to college. So you might have planned everything, you got the money, but it might be locked up somewhere. If your money is not liquid at that point in time, because all of a sudden you will be just asked, pay 20 lakh rupees for entrance. You are suddenly paying a huge amount for travel. You are suddenly paying a huge amount for setting up somewhere. So you need a lot of liquidity at the point in time that your kid is going into college. And many parents don't plan for this well enough. So while they have the money saved, it's typically locked maybe in some real estate or something where they're not easily able to take that money out at that point in time.
Is the most expensive education the best education?
Not necessarily, right? The way schools price it, this is based on demand. So even if I were to look at all the schools that I looked in right now, the most expensive school was actually not right for my son because it was a school which was highly competitive. They encourage high competition. And I really felt that my son would not thrive in that, right? And I opted for a school which was significantly less expensive than that. So an expensive education need not necessarily mean better. It may mean better infrastructure, it may mean slightly better teachers. It may mean more personal attention. But within a set which you have decided, I think you should take a decision based on what fits your child the best. More than let me go for the most expensive or the one that every parent is putting my child in.
So, do you think the guilt or such kind of compromising feelings come into a picture or affects parents' decision when it comes to child's education?
It's very close to home. I've just taken the decision for my son. And what happens is when we think about the decisions we take for our children, we take it from our hearts and not take it from a financial prudence perspective. So, one way in which many parents take this decision is looking at their peer set, right? And you want to be able to afford at least as much as they are, and you want to be do it in a way such that I can make a choice for my child without thinking about it. The way most parents think about it is, I want to do the best So that comparison invariably happens. And while it is real, we also have to remember that always taking decisions that are based on comparison may not be the right choice for you or your family. The irony is it actually may not be the right thing for your child. So I always advise parents, try and do what is right for your child. Take the decisions not to outdo other children, but to take the right decision for your child. And as a parent, it is difficult for us to absorb it, but it is a very important kind of a guiding principle to keep and not just be influenced by FOMO.
So, what would be those money habits that they need to inculcate in their day to day life?
Hopefully, you've already been saving up. So, I always recommend that you should be saving at least 30 to 40% of your income, up to 50% if you can. Right? If you are a double income, for example, that becomes very affordable. But at least 30 to 40%, depending on whether you're paying an EMI or not. So, the first is an emergency fund. Right? Today the job market is very uncertain. Income loss can happen at any point in time, and that can put a lot of financial stress, particularly when your kid is young. So it's important to build an emergency fund of about 6 to 8 months of your expenses. So even if something happens, you are not financially under pressure. So that's the first tip that I would give. I think the second tip I would say is take health insurance. So most of us rely on the health insurance that our employer gives us. So what you do is you look at the employer health insurance and either take a super top up or take an additional health insurance which gives that addition protection against any health issues that may come in the family. And when kids are young, that happens. The third thing, big tip I would give you is automate your investments. And I say this very specifically for parents. So automate not just your SIPs, automate your credit card payments, automate your utility bill payments. So you don't have any stress on your day to day life in terms of keeping your finances running smooth.
So, now like transitioning from savings to investment, what would you recommend are the top investment options that parents today have to be prepared?
I think the first thing you have to keep in mind is compounding is your biggest friend. So if I were to take 10 years or 15 years before, let's say somebody had you started a sip of 10,000 rupees every month and you did it properly regularly and you continued for 15 years and maybe you increase the sip a little bit every year as you're getting your increments in salary. At the end of 15 years, all of a sudden you're sitting in more than 1 crore rupees, a big pot of money. So compounding works that way. The second is planning for your child's future is a little bit different from planning for other investments. And that's because your inflation rate, which you're trying to beat by investing, is much higher in education than it is in other cases. So the best product that I have found working for many parents is actually having a basket of mutual fund SIPs, some equity, some debt, but overall aggregate, if you look at equity, it is given about 14% return. So it allows you to not just beat education inflation, also have a buffer at the end of it. So just do a monthly SIP, figure out how much that monthly SIP is using financial planning, and keep investing regularly. Your child's future will be taken care of financially.
So, you've talked about equity, debt, and all, but how about real estate and then gold investment that parents usually think about?
Lot of parents think I put that money aside in real estate. I'll use that when my child needs to go to college. Real estate is a little bit of a risky setup. Multiple reasons. First is on an average, real estate has given about 9% return. And you compare it to equity, it is given 14% return. But you might still find a piece of land or parcel which gives you a high return. The challenge with real estate is also something very different, which is liquidity. Get that real estate into actually cash. And liquidity becomes very important because this is a one point in time heavy expense. So I've seen many parents struggle at that point in time that even though they have these properties, the market is down, you're not finding the right buyers, suddenly you're not able to convert it to cash. And then you're scrambling around saying, should I take a loan? Should I do something intermediate to make sure that my son or daughter has the money that they need? So, in that sense, for a child's future, real estate is actually not a great investment option. Real estate is a great investment option if you want to live in that property. From a gold perspective, again, as all Indians, we have a great affinity towards gold, and I know I've heard my mother say that I will save the gold for her; it will be good for her future, and we all think that way. The challenge with gold is, while it's been a good investment, the last 20 years, the return on gold has only been about 8 to 9%, right? Actually, closer to 8%, which means you're not beating inflation. So again, from a gold should form a part of your whole portfolio, but from investing for your child's future, it's not a great product.
What is your suggestion around loan versus building your own corpus?
Loans are a very expensive way to fund education. If you don't have the corpus, you should still take a loan because education is an investment for the future. But loans are a very expensive way to fund it. So there are different kinds of loans which are available, but the challenge is the interest rate on these loans is very high. right? So they'll be like 12%, 13%. I think the least, and if you get into a very premier college like an IIM or anything, you might get a 10% kind of an interest rate. So it's significantly expensive. Also, it puts a lot of pressure on the family. So these loans are not just given based on the degree, they ask for collateral from the family. Now imagine your kid is just coming out of engineering college. So the average earning of a child who's come out of engineering college is about 50,000 rupees today. And they'll have to pay an EMI of about 35,000 rupees. Doesn't leave much for them to live on. So what happens? You step in to pay it. You are close to retirement. So you also feel the heat of it, right? So as a family, you come under a financial stress at that point in time just because you have not prepared for it. Preparing for it, on the other hand, leaves you very cool and comfortable at that point in time.
So, like, we've navigated through the challenges faced by parents, the mistakes they've made, and then you've helped us devise strategies around how should they be investing. So, should this approach change for parents as the child grows older?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a concept in finance called a glide path. And if you have an advisor, you should ask them to advise you on it. And if you don't have one, please find one. So what does the glide path say is initially, let's say when my child is, let's say 5 years, I'm starting now, let's say my child is 5 or 6 years old. I don't need that money till my child is 17. I'm going to keep it aside. So what I can do for the next 7, 8 years is take high risk. So I might even decide that I'm not going to put any money in debt. I'm going to put everything into equity. Because while the market may go up or down, in a 7, 8 year period, I'm going to still get a very good 12, 13% return if I look at history. Then comes the time period when your child is coming to 8th standard, right? You're 4, 5 years from college. And at that point in time, you don't want to have this risk. What if you keep investing only in equity and suddenly everything, your portfolio falls down, and then you're seeing your hard earned efforts go to waste, right? So that time what you do is you slowly move from a high equity portfolio to a more balanced. Say, I might say I want to do 60% equity because I still want growth, but I want 40% debt so that I can protect some of my money, right? So an important understanding here is equity has high risk, high return. Debt has slightly lower return, but also lower risk, right? The value of that portfolio will not change that much. So I try to, and this happens slowly, right? This doesn't happen suddenly one day I'm selling all of my investments and moving to debt. It happens slowly over a period of time, and gradually you change your investment. So by that end of that period, you're relatively lower on equity. And then comes the 1 or 2 years before going to college, and here you want to go almost everything into slowly want to move everything into debt because then you can take it out in just a few days without a lot of market movements. So this entire process of planning, and you might not want everything also, you might keep something for year 2, year 3, etc. This entire process of planning for your child's goal is what's called a glide path, and it's important that you have good financial advice to be able to plan this.
There might still be some parents who are in the journey, who might just have their kids going to class 10th or maybe soon college in a couple of years or maybe abroad education. So, is it too late for them to prepare?
So while you may not have the benefit of starting early, you have the benefit of starting today, right? Starting today still gives you control, still makes it manageable, still allows you to build certain things from your portfolio itself. It also means that you might need to take hard choices. So you might say, okay, so where can I cut a little bit back and increase my SIP? Or you might say, okay, is there something I've put money somewhere for, say, an expensive vacation? Can I move it into my child's fund? So, because you're consciously looking at it, you start making these choices. You might even make a choice that, hey, you might talk to your kid and say, hey, don't go for undergrad abroad. I'll send you for your post graduation abroad, which will give you more time and will probably be less expensive to study abroad, right? So, these are all real choices about how you can then prepare. So even if you are late, I would say start today, start now. It's never too late. I have seen clients who started with 5 to 6 years and who managed to accumulate enough of a portfolio to make the journey for their child pain free.
How can parents create awareness among children about money consciousness without creating any pressure on them?
Every generation feels that they value the money more than the next generation, and it's very important that we have these money conversations with our child and help our children build these money habits. So there are three tips for me from which I believe are important for parents to build these money habits. First is involve them early. You can get your 5 year old to pay for in a shop You can get your 13-year-old to sit with you and look at your mutual funds portfolio. What this does is it makes money real to them. They understand that money is a way to achieve things, and it's important to invest and build your wealth. The second thing I would say is we often talk about costs, we don't talk about choices. So let's say your kid comes and asks for something expensive. You say, no, no, it's too expensive, right? Or we can't afford it. But actually, it's about a choice, right? So it's about saying, hey, we are not buying this because we are going to save this money for something important in the future. What it does is it makes real to them that money is a limited resource and you have to take trade offs to actually decide where you're going to spend it. So it makes it real for them. The third thing is let them make some actual small financial transactions and decisions on their own. So a great thing which happens is give them a monthly allowance. Let that monthly allowance not just be spent for fun stuff, but get them to spend for things that they need. So I think the important thing to remember is your children are not just going to inherit your wealth. They're not just going to inherit your habits, but they're also going to inherit your money habits and how their relationship with money. And it's up to you to build that right for them.
If you found today's conversation valuable and want advice tailored to your financial journey, book a free session with a Scripbox expert. It's quick, easy, and built around your goals. You will find the link in the description below. We look forward to helping you make smarter money decisions.